Most of us think that people who are self-disciplined are probably deprived of pleasures and happiness, and are constantly haunted by visions of other people having a good time. Recent studies across the world conclude the opposite. They find that people who are self-disciplined are generally happier, both in the moment and over time. Let's learn how. Stay tuned. According to a 2013 study by Wilhelm Hoffman, people with high self-control are happier than those without. The study discovered this is true because the self-disciplined persons were more capable of dealing with goal conflicts. These people spent less time debating whether to indulge in behaviors detrimental to their health, and were able to make positive decisions more easily. The self-discipline did not allow their choices to be dictated by impulses or feelings. Instead, they made informed, rational decisions on a daily basis, without feeling overly stressed or upset. Consequently, they experience freedom from negative emotions. Another study conducted by a KPMG demographer in Australia concludes that the secret to happiness in the 21st century is the ability to have self-discipline to control the excesses of modern life. However, in addition to the above two studies and numerous other such studies, even religious and spiritual paths emphasis on self-discipline to achieve ultimate peace and happiness. A disciplined mind leads to happiness, and an undisciplined mind leads to suffering. Peace and happiness shall fill your mind deep within, if you act according to truth and self-discipline. People with a higher degree of self-control spend less time debating whether or not to indulge in behaviors that are detrimental to their health, and are able to make positive decisions more easily. They don't let impulses or feelings dictate their choices. Instead, they make level-headed decisions. As a result, they tend to feel more satisfied with their lives. An interesting example quoted by Chuck Gallozzi. Like everyone, Noel likes to believe that Sunday is a day off from work. A day in which he can do anything he pleases. However, his conscience was reminding him that a business presentation that he was scheduled to do was approaching and he should be preparing for it. Being Sunday, he didn't feel like working. But he understood, it isn't necessary for us to enjoy everything we do. Enjoy it or not, we should do everything that needs to be done. So, Noel packed his bags and headed for the library, where he wouldn't be distracted. Despite not wanting to work, Noel was at the library doing just that. About 2.5 hours later, he was growing restless, and wondering if he should return home and continue working there. No, he thought, that idea is just a temptation to take a break. I'd better refocus on the task at hand, and get it done as soon as possible. Noel's behavior reminds me of something W.K. Hope said. Self-discipline is when your conscience tells you to do something, and you don't talk back. Noel got the message and he didn't talk back. As a result, 5 hours later, the job was done. Noel left the library with a broad grin on his face. While driving back home, he reflected on what happened. Here's what he discovered. It is within our power to do what we don't feel like doing. So, it is our responsibility, duty, or obligation that is important, not our feelings. We cannot think of two things at the same time. So once we immerse ourselves in a task, it grows increasingly interesting. All thoughts about whether it is pleasant or not fade from our consciousness. Thus, the pain associated with doing something we don't want to is short-lived. Our freedom to succeed and get the most from life is worth the effort. After finishing an important task that we didn't feel like doing, there is a feeling of exhilaration. We feel proud of our accomplishment, and delighted to learn we have the self-discipline to take charge of our life. Therefore, what we thought would be painful turns out to be pleasurable. What's more, as we experience this truth, we come to embrace discomfort because of the pleasure conquering it will bring. Not only pleasure, but power. For they who have mastered self-discipline can be, do, or have anything they want. When we do what we don't feel like doing because it needs to be done, we develop self-discipline and a strong sense of responsibility. 2 critical keys to success. As we experience victory after victory, we will grow in confidence, feel exuberant, and know what it truly means to be happy. To avoid missing out on success, we mustn't be tricked into running from responsibility, to indulge in some fleeting pleasure. For as we waste valuable time, we will be racked with guilt, greatly diminishing our pleasure. And whatever momentary pleasure we were to experience, it would later be followed by stress and regret. When we carefully consider these facts, we will discover that what we usually interpret as pleasurable ends up being painful. And what we first interpret as painful, turns out to be pleasurable. The lesson, then, is we have to think before we act, for the price of living irresponsibly, and neglecting our duties, is loss of happiness. On the other hand, the result of being self-disciplined, and living up to our responsibilities is happiness. So onwards, don't worry, be self-disciplined. Because now we know self-discipline leads to real happiness. If we inspired you to do what you don't feel like doing, then hit the like button. And please write in comment. Agreed. Please share and subscribe to the channel Nirvana for further lessons. Let's summarize this.